So recently I had the opportunity to shoot the COP 357, and it's probably the worst gun I've ever shot. The COP 357 is a 4-shot double action only Derringer chambered in .357 Magnum. Now, there's nothing inherently wrong with that combination, or so I thought, but this pistol is pretty unique in how terrible it is. By the way, this pistol is being borrowed from my friends Matt and Ivan over at Fudbusters or Fud Blasters. Go ahead and check out their review on this pistol as well. So looking at this pistol on the surface, it seems pretty benign. It's the short stop from TF2, but immediately upon picking it up, I realized that something was wrong. It was designed for people with extremely small hands. If I grip this gun naturally where it wants to go, kind of in that pocket of my hand, I actually cannot pull the trigger all the way to the break. My finger is too long, it crashes into the frame, and I have to put forth a ridiculous amount of effort, most of that energy being wasted on just pushing into the frame to actually get this trigger to break. So I have to kind of contort it around in my hand, twist it in my hand to get the barrel more in line with my forearm so I can actually get my finger in a place where I can pull this trigger all the way to the break. But that puts it in a really unnatural position for me, and I just don't like it. Plus, under any sort of recoil, this grip is so smooth that it's just gonna wanna twist in my hand, and I found that happening to me when I was shooting it. By the third or fourth shot, it would end up in the natural position where it was going to be in my hand, and then I had trouble pulling the trigger. I would have to put this double action trigger somewhere right at around 20 pounds. Another weird thing about it is, unlike almost any other popular double action out there, which have hinge triggers, so the trigger operates off of a single pivot point, the trigger on the COP 357 goes straight back like a 1911, and it's long. It's a very long double action trigger pull. This definitely contributes to the problem I was having with my index finger crashing into the frame long before the trigger is ready to break because it breaks so far back. Now, I will give it some points for having a smooth face trigger with a nice sort of radius to it. It actually feels really comfortable in the first joint of my index finger, but because, again, this pistol was designed for people with extremely small hands and I have to hold it in that way, it actually forces me to pull the trigger with the pad of my index finger, and I hate pulling the trigger with the pad of my index finger. I don't do that on any of my pistols. I always pull with the first joint or deeper. Sometimes I'll pull even with the second joint of my finger here, but I can't do that on this pistol because I'll run into the frame. The only other maybe positive thing I can say about this pistol is the double action is actually pretty smooth, but like I said, it is pretty heavy, the travel's pretty long, and it's that weird straight back double action thing that I'm not too familiar with. Something that was surprising when I got this pistol is that the sight picture is actually not terrible. Now the front sight is round, so that's going to reflect light at you in all different angles, and the whole gun's made out of stainless steel, so it's bright, right? It's always going to want to reflect light at you, and that's going to give you an inconsistent sight picture. But this pistol is really just, you know, give and take. I'll say something positive about the trigger, but then the pistol defeats that one positive aspect. Same thing with the sights. The sights are actually not terrible on this pistol, but it doesn't really matter because this pistol could have shipped, you know, without any sights at all, and I would have had basically the same experience that I had on the range. This pistol at less than 10 yards could not reliably hold the 10-inch repair center of a bullseye target. Almost completely sideways on that one. Had another one go in the same hole here. It was hidden like that. I distinctly remember having one shot that broke with perfect sight alignment, perfect trigger control, felt just like dry fire practice where the sights don't move, only for the round to hit sideways several inches off to the right of where I was aiming. So I'm out here, I'm probably 7 yards away, and I have one going basically sideways out of the gun here. Another one coming in basically sideways. This one's tipping. These two went in straight. Nowhere near where my sights were when I pulled the trigger either. So I actually intended to shoot this pistol at 25 yards to start, but when I went to go shoot, I didn't see where the shot went. So I went to 15 yards and I shot again. I couldn't see where the shot went. It was almost irresponsible to shoot at a distance greater than 10 yards with this pistol because there was no indication on the target backer or anything of where the bullets were actually ending up. At 25 yards, you know, if my experience at 7 yards was any indication, my bullets at 25 yards would have been hitting multiple feet off to the right of the target into the berm. And that was pretty much the exact same experience that Fud Blasters or Fudbusters had in their video on this pistol. And I have to agree with their conclusion that something is pretty wrong with this pistol from an engineering standpoint. Either the rifling is too shallow, the bore is too large, the twist rate is too slow, or more likely a total combination of those things. And that's pretty unique to this pistol because short-barreled .38 specials have existed for a long time. Snub-nose Smith & Wesson revolvers do not have this problem. I've shot my snub-nose Smith & Wesson .38 special revolver out at 50 yards, and I got groups, I think that were like 10.5 inches, with most of my shots in the repair center on a bullseye target at 50 yards, right? Whereas this pistol at 7 yards can't hold the repair center reliably, right? And the barrels on those Smith & Wesson 36s and Model 60s are 1 7/8 inches, which are really not that much smaller or larger than this pistol here. I'm actually not quite sure what the barrel length of this pistol is, but it can't be much more or less than a Smith & Wesson Model 36, right? 1 7/8 is not a whole lot of barrel. And if having your bullets destabilize at 7 yards doesn't sound fun enough for you, this pistol actually just physically hurts to shoot. I shot exactly 3 rounds of .357 Magnum out of this pistol before I felt this weird pinging nerve sensation in the middle of my hand, where this, you know, super tiny grip, this hump right here, was just beating into my hand. Oh, okay, all right, that's enough of that. So I figured that this thing probably wasn't worth, you know, potential like nerve damage to my hand. So I shot the rest of the session with 38 specials, which, you know, they didn't hurt me. They did still have enough energy to shift the gun around in my hand under recoil. You know, even though I usually death grip pistols, right? The 38 specials were still moving it around in my hand because this backstrap was so smooth, which then had that problem where the pistol would end up naturally where it wants to sit in my hand, and then I wouldn't be able to pull the trigger unless I did some weird thing with my hand. I actually ended up having better luck shooting this pistol with my left hand for some reason. Maybe my fingers are slightly shorter on my left hand or something like that. Also, part of the reason of primarily shooting this pistol with my left hand in the range session was the construction of this pistol is not exactly confidence inspiring. And when I shot those .357 Magnums, it just really felt like it kind of wanted to blow up. And if it did want to blow up, I would rather have it blow up in my left hand than my dominant shooting hand, right? So yeah, besides being the short stop from TF2, I see absolutely no reason why anyone would ever want to own this thing, and especially not for how much these cost. If you're looking for something similar to this for actual self-defense usage, there are a plethora of better handguns out there, from Smith & Wesson J-frames to modern subcompacts and more proven pocket pistol designs. You know, you buy this thing basically because you think it's cool, and if you think it's worth what these things actually sell for, you know, more power to you. But having shot this pistol, I don't think I would ever be interested in owning anything like this. So thank you to Fudbusters for allowing me to borrow and shoot this fantastic piece of engineering. I really thought, you know, I would be able to get something resembling a group out of it, but the pistol just doesn't shoot. So yeah, that's pretty much it for the COP .357 Magnum, probably the worst gun I've ever shot, and I'm going to be happy to send it back to Matt. So thank you all for watching. Thank you especially to my channel members and Patreon supporters for supporting the channel directly. This is sort of a shorter review format I'm going to start doing for guns that I don't necessarily want to do the full review treatment like with the K38. My next video is going to be on the Colt All-American 2000, which I'm also borrowing from Fudbusters. So thanks again. I'll see you next time.
Like, comment, and subscribe.